Hey, it's Matt with the Fine Finish Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I wanted to start off by letting you know about a couple things we have going on here. First of all, sorry for the delay between these episodes. We try to get them out every week, but when we get slammed here in the store, the podcast takes a hit. So the goal is weekly, but it's looking like every couple weeks now is going to be the thing. So also, we're on Apple Podcasts now. If that's where you like to listen to your podcast, you can definitely listen there. We're also always on Spotify and now on YouTube. All episodes are on all platforms, so you can check it out. We'd also appreciate if you could give us some feedback. Feel free to comment below. You can go to our Facebook page, the Fine Finish Podcast Facebook page, or Instagram. Message us there, comment there. You can also call the store at 866-304-8640, or you can email me, matt@hassosales.com. That's matt@jassosales.com. Also, like and subscribe to this channel. That would really help us get the word out there and continue bringing this content to you. On today's episode, Lewis is going to sit down with John and Johnathan Darroch of Apollo Spray. That's father and son. They run the company. It's a family-run company out of California. Longtime friends of ours, business friends, longtime personal friends of Lewis. They sit down to give us some insight on how the company started, where they're at now, where they're going. So we appreciate them sitting down with us while they're in town. Let's get to the interview.
I go hard in the pain. I go hard in the pain. I go hard in the pain.
I think we already did an intro. It'll be like
we're just going to cut to this from
like a scene.
All right, so do you have a topic or something that you're going to...
I'm just gonna let y'all tell the story. That's all we do is just bullshit. So it's like
just talk back and forth.
that's it. So yeah.
We can cut out if there's shit and we'll add to it, whatever it's fine.
Okay.
All right, so we've got John and Johnathan with us from Apollo HVLP. Drove all the way down from San Diego, California, Vista, California, and now you're doing the family thing. And we did a demo this morning, and appreciate y'all coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always a great time to be out here in Texas.
Yeah.
I should have been born in Texas, just saying.
So we did a demo this morning, but I think, for our listeners, what's really cool is we'd love to just hear your story, and how did Apollo HVLP come to be?
Wow, yeah, that's a story I never get tired of telling. So probably want to put your slippers on and
Yeah, we've got plenty of time.
sit by the fire. No, it's July. We're not going to be sitting by fires, especially here in Houston. It's a pretty cool story, I guess. Apollo, a lot of people think Apollo was actually started by us and our family, but it wasn't.
Okay.
One of my dad's friends actually in England, in the United Kingdom, started Apollo back in 1966. And it wasn't until the early 80s that my family and I got involved in the spray systems. And it was really just kind of a coincidence. My dad had always been kind of an entrepreneur and had always had his own businesses. And we had come over here from England. I was just a young boy at the time. And my dad so we came over here at the time on what's called a B1 visa, which meant that my dad, that we could all be here in the States legally as alien residents, but my dad had to be employed, self-employed.
Yep.
So he could not work for anybody else. He couldn't take an American job. He had to provide a job or work for himself. So that wasn't a big deal. My dad had already been, he had a successful line of motor accessory shops that he ran in the UK for a number of years. And when we sold that and moved out to the US, and he'd been bumbling around with a few other things. We actually got into importing English antiques for a while, and did a couple other things that over the course of say 3 or 4 years sort of went up and mushroomed and kind of fell flat. And sort of, my dad was pretty good at realizing sort of when a business was not going to be viable anymore.
Sure.
And was pretty smart about getting out before it took him out kind of thing.
Yep.
So we were able to get out of that, and so he had called his friend in England, who just happened to have the same name, John, and he said, hey, I'm in between stuff right now. I'm trying to think of something to do. And John had always been a mentor for my dad. So he was actually a partner in his motor accessory business that he had in England at one time. And it's always been sort of a business mentor. We all need good business mentors. And John was that person for my dad. And he basically said, you know what? We've got these sprayers that we've been selling in Texas for a couple of years, and the local outlet. So Apollo in England actually was selling the sprayers here prior to our family being involved, and they had their original office was right over on Hempstead Highway in Houston. Yep. So that's where your grandfather, I think, picked up his system, right? Like 35 years ago or something crazy?
Multiple systems.
Right, yeah. So that was kind of cool, meeting your grandfather and seeing the original gun that he had from like 35, 40 years ago or longer. But in 1984, I'll remember this because my dad said, okay, we're going to get into the sprayers. And actually it was 1982, he got into the sprayers and started doing really well with it. We actually started out at the AWFS woodworking show, which back then was like 19, what was that? We in August, an odd year, so it would have been 83 that we did that show. That was the first show, and that was when it was at the Los Angeles Convention Center back then. And so my dad said, okay, maybe I'll give it a shot. So I still have these books. So he got a book from the library. I think it was called something like Spray Finishing. It was like almost one of those,
for dummies or something.
Like learn how to spray finish. Like, so we had no clue how to finish, how to use a spray gun. Never touched a spray gun in my life, right? So my dad's like, all right, I guess I got to learn how to do this stuff before I could sell it. So he went and got a bunch of books and read them at the library, from the library, and brushed up on his painting skills. And went off to the show, and so John said, look, I'll send you 10 machines over from England, and if you do well, then great. You can pay me for them, and you can order some more, and we'll send you some more, and go from there. So my dad said, all right. So we took the 10 machines on consignment, and my dad booked a booth at the AWFS Woodworking Show back in '83, and he went there and did the show by himself, had a little 10-foot booth, and he sold 45 systems.
Nice.
And so that was the beginning.
Awesome.
Right? So obviously needed to get 35 more systems real quick. Because we had sales that we had no product for. So that's where it started. So we started, he started bringing these machines in, completely assembled in England, fully built, ready to go. And all we did was turn them. And he'd pack them up in his car. Back then he had an old Cadillac, and the old big Cadillacs, man, you could get a lot in those things. He'd pack like 10 systems in a car, and he'd go out and do demos, and he'd be gone all day long, and he'd come back and he'd sell 3 or 4 of them, and next day he'd go out and do the same thing until he got rid of them all, and then so that's how it kind of started. And
pounding the pavement. That's
pounding the
old
pavement.
school
so
sales.
Trade
man.
shows,
Awesome.
and then he'd take the leads from those trade shows. And the nice thing was, having the show in LA, it was close for us, so it wasn't an impossibility for us to drive back up to LA and go do demos and things like that. So that's what he would do, is he'd take the leads, and then he would go do the demos, and sell the systems of anything that he didn't sell at the show. He would end up following up and selling for it.
And then referral business. Once you get so many,
and then eventually you get referral business, and so things got going pretty good. And by '84. We were already outselling what they were doing in Houston. So they still had the Houston outlet too. And so they were selling product to us, and they were selling product to the Apollo sprayers in Houston as well at the same time. And we were just blowing them out of the water. So the conversation came around that there was some mess management going on in Houston, and blah, 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 and the lack of business. And so it was decided by the higher ups that we were going to go out there and close down the Houston operation and move everything back to California. So I remember doing that in 1984. I was like 15 years old, and we went back, and my dad and I flew to Houston, and we packed up a 35-foot U-Haul truck in the middle of July. I don't know what it is with coming out here in July, dude. I'm not smart, I guess. I don't know.
You just don't know.
No, I know.
Well, you know now. You know now.
Well, I learned when I was 15 years old. I just didn't. I was like forgot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I keep coming out here in July, man. I don't know what the hell. Something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I'm a glutton for punishment. But anyways, yeah, so we packed that thing up, and I remember driving that U-Haul truck back across the desert, back to California. First time I ever experienced heat stroke. Yeah. Because, the old U-Hauls back then were like 4 grinders, man. They were just grinding the gears and no AC. And,
probably 50 miles an hour the whole way.
Brutal, yeah. I remember coming down into Phoenix, and it was like 116 and into the sun, and it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. And I was like ready to pass out. And my dad, and the way he got me is like, the promise was at the end of the day that no matter what, we'd find a hotel with a swimming pool. That was what was keeping me going, was that swimming pool. Yeah, man. Sure enough, we finally got to the hotel, and both of us just went and jumped in the pool, man. And it was like,
awesome. Yeah.
Anyway, we got back, and the rest is history. We closed down the Houston outlet, and we kept everything in California. And it was probably about the middle, maybe the late 80s, was when we started sort of realizing that the economies of building product in England, importing it here, and then selling it here was no longer viable.
Right.
When we first started doing that, labor and some of those things were cheaper in England than they were here. And then over the years, it started to start to become a match. Right. And so when you add in the freight and everything else, it wasn't viable. So what we started doing was started having kits shipped over. So we'd have the guns completely built, then we would build our own hoses, and we'd buy the hose material here. Yep. And then we would bring kits over without the motors in them, because the other big problem for Apollo in England was supplying the motors. Right. Because everything in Europe is 220 volt for the most part. And so getting a 110 volt motor was not easy for them. They had to custom order them, and they had to wait for them to get delivered and everything else. So, we can get 110 volts off the shelf here. So it just made sense. So back in the day, we used to actually go down to Granger, and I can remember going to Granger's and filling up, again, the back of my dad's trunk and his Cadillac with a bunch, and we'd go down and buy like 50, 60 motors at a time and load them in the back of his trunk and drive them back to the factory. And that was then. So then I would go up and help him in the evening, and we'd put turbines together, and we'd build those and put the kits together. Yep. And then he'd load them in the car, and the next day he'd go off and sell them again. Yeah. And we did this, I don't know, for probably 5 years. Yep. 5 or more years before we finally got some employees that could, we were starting to sell enough. Then we got some salespeople that were doing some of the selling besides just my dad. And that sort of got us through the 80s. And then in 89 is when we actually moved from our original location in Orange County, which was about 60 miles north of where we're located now. Yep. And we moved south. And that was when we purchased the buildings that we're in now. And we've been in our location in Vista now ever since, for the last 35 years. And awesome. We've completely, obviously, changed the product now. The product that we were originally buying in England has been completely changed. We've built our own product. We make our own spray guns. We build our own turbine systems. And really, I think what's happened over the years, too, is the markets have become completely different. Yep. Right? The market, although I do believe that the market in the UK wants a professional HVLP system, but the main brands that are available in Europe right now don't provide those to them. Sure. So like we have Titan brand here. Titan doesn't even exist in Europe. Sure. So they can't buy any of the HVLP Titan machines. They have like these other, what do they call it?
I know there's different
Flexio
ones.
system, and they have a bunch other types of HVLP, but they don't have the access to the motors that we have here. So we just bought out our Precision 6 machine last year. They don't even have 6-stage motors in the UK. Right. So we actually found a niche in providing some of our systems back to England because of that. we make product that they can't make in Europe. And so we now sell product back to the European market only at the higher levels where they want the 5 and 6 stage motors that they can't get in Europe.
Well, but it's cool because I've spent time at your warehouse. I've seen all the old pictures, a lot of the old models, and at what point did y'all start changing everything from what it was to, and who was responsible for that? Where did the innovation come from? Where, who took charge of, really changing the product and making it your own?
That was all my dad at the time, because we were basically relying upon product that England was saying, this is what you need to sell.
Right.
And at first that was great, but then as the years went on, we started to realize, as I said before, that the markets were different.
Yes. Yep.
Or becoming different. At first they were very similar, but then here we have a lot more smaller mom and pop shops. We have a lot more cabinet makers and woodworkers and things like that. It's a much bigger market here than it is in Europe.
Yeah.
There are niche places in Europe where people do those things, but it's not nearly as popular as it is here.
Right.
So we found that it was really the market forces that kind of pushed us in the direction that we've gone. We've always wanted to maintain the industrial level of our product, and some of those older products that we had, things like our old Brigadier. I mean, that was a system that was designed for working out in the field with the oil rigs, right?
Sure.
And it had a gasoline motor on it that provided the air supply, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
They could run that thing out in the middle of nowhere off a 10-gallon pressure pop, so they could spray all the oil donkeys and stuff like that in the middle of the field.
Probably pipe.
And pipe,
It's a lot of pipe here.
Yep. So all of that stuff, all of the, and that's kind of what drove the original business. And that when we got into that level of the business, we got into a lot of woodworking, industrial woodworking applications and things like that. And so that's kind of what drove the product changes, I think. And my dad had realized that starting back in the middle 80s. And I think it was about 86, 87 when we actually started redesigning our own turbine systems.
Yeah.
And so, at the very beginning, we had the little 500, that little blue unit. And then we had the little red space saucer, the one.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. We actually have
400, I think. Yeah, that's
This
even
is a 400.
Yeah. So that would be a single stage version of the same machine, basically. But we did that in a single stage and 2 different versions of a 2-stage back then.
Yep.
Because you got to remember, in the 80s, the biggest motor we had was a 3-stage motor, which isn't even the same 3-stage motor as we got now.
Yeah, because I was going to say,
where that retro logo came from. Right? So this is the actual logo that we had. Our orange and yellow logo,
which is a cool logo.
Everybody keeps telling me we got to go back to that logo.
Dude,
on the current product.
I think I was probably, I'm not going to take full credit for it, but I remember seeing that and like, you should do a throwback.
Oh, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
And then Johnathan was like,
did put it on his shirt, and we're like, fuck yeah, that was badass, dude.
Yeah, so that's a trip, right? So, I mean, that was literally our logo from the 70s and 80s. That was put on all the machines. In fact, your grandpa's unit, that red space saucer has that same logo on it.
That was supposed to be a limited run, but that's not how it went.
Hey, well, like you're saying though, I mean,
received great.
And it's funny because listening to your dad's story, Matt's here, obviously not in camera, but he's here, and I mean, just the shit that we've done, like seriously, man, like working out of your truck, working out of the garage, put shit together, make stuff happen because of sales, right? Yeah, just sales. Like if you're, it's whatever we need to do, right? And it sounds like your dad did the
I
same
think that's
thing.
what I mean. Honestly, if you're an entrepreneur, that's what drives your business.
Absolutely.
Right? You see the changes in the market and you adjust and you change your business accordingly.
Yeah, well, like when you and I met, that was shit. I don't know. We've been
6 years ago.
5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But I remember it was the Precision 5, and then we started. You sent me one. I started using it. Well, let me back up.
No, you bought one.
Yeah. So let me back up. Yeah, I was kind of at a weird place in my finishing business where I was going through a dissolution of a business partner.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, okay, what am I doing? Our overhead was super, super high. So I was trying to cut every cost, right? And that was forcing us to look at spray equipment. And which was funny because when I grew up, I learned how to spray with a Graco HVLP. So at some point, the family just went to using Graco. And that's what I would always use, was a Graco turbine. Once I started my own business and got the shop and the finishing shop, this is where we were spraying precats and conversion varnishes, right? And got introduced to air-assisted airless, and just was like, oh man, this is it. Went completely to air-assisted airless, primarily because, to me, just using a non-variable speed turbine with that Graco gun, I mean, we would be like in a cloud all the time because we were buying the biggest turbine, using real, low solid, low viscosity material, and just making a freaking mess.
Yep.
And the air-assisted airless just made a lot of sense at the time. Well, fast forward 5, 6, 7 years, however long it was, going through this business partnership thing, I was like, well, fuck, maybe I need to go back to HVLP because we started using the 2K polys. And it was like, now I was paying a lot more, but I was using way less material.
Right.
And I'm like, if I'm using this much less material with air assisted, if I could get the HVLP dialed in, because I was using a lot of compressed air HVLP in the shop with the 2K polys. So I was like, that's cool in the shop, but on site. My guy's out on site. And actually Jose was back there working. He was around for this whole thing, And we bought, I remember, because we had turbines still. We had like all these different random turbines, Titan, Graco, American Tire, like all these different ones. But I was like, man, maybe I need to find a gun. And it led me to the Apollo, and I was like, holy shit, that's the nicest turbine gun I've ever seen, right? And I ordered the wrong needles and nozzles. I know you experience that all the time. And that kind of led me to talking to you, because I was just like, man, I don't know. And that's what kicked off our conversation. And, I think what you were saying about your dad and listening to the market, right? And that's where so much innovation comes to play. And and even myself, I have to like kind of dive into stuff again and just make sure like I'm understanding the market needs. Right. But we did the Precision 5 Pro LE, right?
Yep.
Like, let's differentiate it to track the sales, and turned it black. And then I think what the big game changer was putting all the needles and nozzles in the gun case.
Yeah.
Because
having a full setup.
Because it took all that time away from, well, hey, which one? And I didn't get the right one. And it was like, well, it's all there. So you could try a variety of different things. So yeah, that's cool, man. I know that's it's cool to hear, and how everything just comes full circle, and now we're here with our store doing the same thing.
Well, that's what keeps entrepreneurs, I think, going, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just what you do today; it's what you do tomorrow.
Exactly.
And that's one thing I've realized. I've been running the business now. So my dad retired in 1998. And that's when I took over running the business. So I've been running it now for 26 years.
Yeah.
And, I think the biggest thing you realize is that you've got to be thinking, a year or two down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the thing. So you got to always have what's the next thing coming, what's that? Because if you don't, then your competition is going to do the same thing.
Sure.
And it's no different whether you're painting cabinets or designing equipment, right?
Right.
You've got to realize what's happening in the marketplace, and you've got to be able to give the market what they want.
Yeah, and look at alternative industries. I know that's one big thing that's changed too. There's so much, we've done so much with the automotive industry now, and I know you're really taking that and running with it, with the maximizer systems and just diversifying, right? Because here in Houston, I could say, man, that's a crazy thought that there's so much pipe that gets coated here. I think we've talked about it in conversation before, but people, even coating suppliers, bring it up like, oh man, there's so much industrial paint business down there. I'm like, yeah, there sure is, but there's also a million people trying to sell to them. And what could we do differently, and I think we've had that conversation, like going into the plants. I think I had one guy that worked in the plants or something and made a comment to me one time, and he's like, yeah, this would be perfect if because of X, Y, and Z, right? Because now with our system and the this and that, we have to do this. I'm like, shit, we could put this on a cart, dude. You roll it right there, just miscellaneous things that they have to touch up in a refinery that you wouldn't think. But that's such a huge market. Like, the amount of hand sanitizer during COVID we sold to these refineries, like, and to them it's nothing.
Right.
It's nothing. Yep. It's pennies. So, yeah.
No, it's about having that next thing, or that next project, or that next big ticket. And you never know what that is. I mean, from our standpoint, I'm constantly, and Johnathan will attest to this, I'm constantly, developing new things.
Oh, I know.
And I'll probably tell you, 80-90% of the products that I think would be great come to market either don't even make it to a prototype stage, or they might make it to a prototype stage and then go, oh damn, what was I thinking? Yeah, so I have this area in the back of the warehouse I call my boneyard, because that's where all the bones go, man.
That's trial and error until you get it right,
No,
so you don't really know until you get your hands wet, or you get your hands dirty and start diving into it. And that's when you know.
And even then, things are an evolution, right? I mean, I think that's one thing I tell all of our customers. When we bring a product out, that means we're satisfied with the functionality and the performance of that product. But that's not necessarily to say that product is the final product, if you will,
it can
right?
get better. Yeah.
Everything that we do, I mean, even down to our atomizer spray gun, right? It's been now 17 years since we introduced the atomizer spray gun. But if I showed you the current version, the 7700 that we're building now, against the original 7500 version that we built back in 2007, you'd see a huge difference, not only in the look and the feel of the gun, but in the performance and that on it as well. We've done a lot of little things that don't really aren't really noticeable on the outside. But and that's what I tell customers. That's why I personally like to get out here, and do what I do, because it's through our discussions and us talking and me being able to converse with our customer base. That I learn what their pain points are, and then I sit and go back to my office and I go, okay, well, how can I solve that? How can I make it better for the customer? How can I make the experience for the customer better? And that's what really drives the innovation in our products, right? It's always that strive to make something easier or better for the customer.
Yeah, I'm gonna play something, and I'm gonna, before we release this, if we have to cut it out, I will. But
if it's copyrighted, it'll get
no. This was a message that this guy Mike sent me. We go, social media. People are always messaging me, but I want you to hear this. I'm gonna put it to the microphone.
Hey Lewis, how's it going? I just wanted to let you know, up here behind the scenes, bunch of dudes. There's been this sort of massive shift towards kind of 1K thinner materials and the usage of HVLP, like it's just brewing. Like I mentioned, I got my hands on an Apollo, and I was having trouble with it, but then it turns out that one piece was installed backwards, which just was like all problems. And it's a dream. Anyway, you hear about less waste, but nobody ever actually mentions that you can go 4 times further on the same amount of material. Big thick 2Ks with an airless, you're overshooting, have to work your way back. With an HVLP, you're just building yourself up. It only takes me 3% longer, but I just knocked all my lot of material and labor costs, including a lot of sanding. From high 20s back down to 12 and under. Wow. Anyways, just keeping you updated. The Apollo fucking rocks.
That's pretty cool.
So,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's to Mike.
But testament, because I was just conversing with another Mike, I think it was, and who knows, maybe this is the same Mike, because I don't know if that Mike's the guy up in Canada. No.
It is, yeah.
Mike Donnie?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mike, if that's how you pronounce your name. I apologize. But yeah, him and I have been going back on Facebook Messenger as well, and he was saying the exact same thing. He's even got it down to where he's like going full circle, and now they're going back to all these low viscosity, high solids, thinner materials that really could only be sprayed with HVLP. Well.
Yeah, and I mean, you know how it is. I think it's one of those trend things. This topic came up earlier, not with y'all, but I was talking with the customer, and then also talking with, Marco with Renner was here, and we were just having the conversation about price and stuff like that, right? And I think social media is an awesome tool, but we know it's kind of odd, right? Because a lot of these dudes like jumped real deep into buying really expensive equipment and using like crazy coatings that were really truly intended for high traffic commercial use, using them in a residential setting. And now, I think especially now with the economy the way it is and inflation the way it is, homeowners just in that level, right? Like commercial work's a whole different thing, but residential work, like these guys are struggling to get, top dollar for these jobs, and it's forcing them to do those things, and it's this guy, Mike, me and him have been speaking for years, but what we primarily usually talk about is like lean, right? And in the finishing process, like he's a man in the van operation.
Yeah, he had really impressed me with like all the stats that he knew, and he's got his operation.
He's got his numbers dialed in,
yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And that's always kind of the conversation. So he's been an HVLP user, but he's a cap spray user, and that's what it's just interesting. I know for a fact. I say we because we've worked together in so many, just a lot of different capacities. I've never been on your payroll, but you have written me. Yeah. So we've traveled the country together. We've done events, and I know for a fact, and anybody that's used Apollo and knows how to use it knows it's the best damn spray gun on the market, hands down, without a doubt. You cannot convince me or prove me otherwise. Like, I promise nobody's going to bring a different turbine gun over here and be like, I'm going to be impressed. I just know I won't, because I've used them all.
Right.
I've used every single one of them, and once these guys get them in their hands, and use them properly, I think you mentioned it to me one time, or maybe somebody didn't, but Graco or Titan, like, they build shit for everybody to be like, hey, here you go. And paint will come out, right? But when we're spraying candy automotive paint like we did earlier with Jose, good luck.
You couldn't do that with a Graco machine.
Good luck, and just to get finishes to lay down the way they do and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that really cuts at the heart of us and who we are as a company,
absolutely,
right? Because, and I got to hand it, I can't take all the credit for that. Mm-hmm. The atomizer gun. Mm-hmm. My dad had a very big, he'd already retired by then. He'd already been in retirement almost 9 or 10 years, but I kind of drug him out of retirement and said, hey, Dad, we need to do a new gun. I need your help. Yeah. And he really helped me more from an aesthetics and an ergonomics sort of way. And he always had good. My dad was really old school in the way he used to do a lot of stuff by hand. Mm-hmm. So, back in, in the old days when they used to model cars and that, they used to use clay, right? And they'd add clay, and then they'd shave it and sand it down and get it. I can show you handles for the 7700 gun, or 75 back then, that my dad actually made, and then he would take like an aluminum handle from another gun, and he would sand it all down and file it and shape it, and then add Bondo back to it and sand it some more and shape it some more. So that was, so he was very instrumental in helping us. And the first iteration I had of that gun that we came out with, he was like, oh, no way, can't do that. And he started slashing and burning all these things. And hand it to them, but that's, the results of what we got. And then we've been able to improve upon that from the original version of it. Yeah. And I think it's through that commitment to only building the best performing products that we can. That puts us where we are.
Absolutely.
Right? I could easily build a cheaper product.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing I tell people. People buy Apollo because they want the best.
Right.
Not only the best performing, but the longest lasting, everything, right? It's just going to be a better product. I'm not the cheapest. No. So don't come to me because you want cheap price. Right? You're not going to buy a Ford for the quality, for the cost of a Cadillac.
Right.
And that's what we're offering you here today is a Cadillac, right? And the same with the turbine systems. But you're buying into a company that's dedicated their lives pretty much in the last 50 plus years to just this type of spray system.
Right.
You got to remember Graco, they make air assisted, they make airless, they make powder coating, they make just about anything that's related to spraying, right? So it's kind of funny that they came to me about 5-6 years ago when they came out with their new machines and started picking my brain and actually, for a while thought we were actually going to be building product for Graco. And you think, well, why is a big company like that coming to us? Well, guess what? We know more about HVLP than Graco does. Yeah. And that's why they came to us. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, what you see now in their Pro and Pro Comp systems is an evolution of
what y'all have
combination
done.
of what we've already done.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
And if it wasn't for our patents on things, they would have flat out copied our digital controls and all of that stuff too. But these are the things, and it's through listening to you guys, to you specifically, and to all of our customers that are out there, and going to trade shows and interacting with our content influencers and all that stuff. That's what gives you the ideas and gives you the incentive and the ability really to go forward and to make changes and to do things to add and make your products better. Because sometimes you just don't know. And that's why I say, the last thing I could ever do at this point is stop going out here and visiting with customers, because that would be the end of the company if I did. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And you always got to take it with a grain of salt too, I think, right? Because you get people that super overcomplicate it, right? Maybe they're not really out there doing a whole lot, right? But they have all these ideas for all this different stuff, and we were kind of talking about that earlier. We're not going to say any names, but and then at the end of the day, it's like, oh shit, man, maybe that wasn't the best idea to let you consume so much of my time. I should have, listened to that one guy that walked in and was like, I only got 5 minutes, because he's doing, $3 million in revenue in this painting company. You know what I mean? And he'll buy like 3 or 4 or 5 Apollos and put them to the test. Kind of like old Three Finger Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. This dude, we love Three Finger Mark.
Yeah, Mark's a good dude.
He's a great dude, man. But, man, some of those Apollo, man, he has put those Apollo turbines through the ringer. And they don't just buy another one, and I went over there one time. I swear he had the lid and the bottom off the box, the machine sideways, and he had built a box that had a fan on the other end. This is summer in Texas, right? So you got to remember, he's in a metal building just like we are here in the back.
Just cooking.
And, it was just cooking. But he's like, oh, it's working way better now. And I'm like, Mark, there's so much dust in here, dude. Like, all that fan is doing, blowing all the wood they're cutting over here, blowing it into the turbine. But, man, he had it working, man. He does. So, yeah. Always, you got to get feedback from everybody.
That's one thing, that's one thing we're limited on, in the sense is that, there's only really 2 manufacturers of the motors that we use in these systems. They're both here in the States, and they both have varying different products that they offer. But there's not one yet that's come out with a machine, and I always keep challenging them, because it's kind of funny, because, Graco and Titan, they just kind of like to keep one-upping each other on who has the most stages.
Right.
And it's like, comparing dick size,
exactly.
If it works, it works, right?
Exactly.
So I never got into that. And so when I talk to the manufacturers, and I tell them, I said straight up, look, I don't care how many stages it has. I just want it to perform.
Yeah.
If you can make a 2-stage motor that works and puts out as much power as a 6-stage, then I'd rather have that 2-stage. I don't really care how many stages there are.
Right.
And I think that's one thing we learned, like when we went into the automotive market, we don't even talk stages.
No.
We don't even talk pressure. We don't even talk anything per se, other than telling them where we're running at different pressures for different coatings.
Right.
But when you're in paint contracting or woodworking side of things, everybody sort of seems to know about stages, and well, then that's a good thing. But if all you really need to know is, what do I need to spray this particular paint, right?
Yeah.
You really need to know about all the stages and all that stuff, because it really doesn't matter. What you need to know is about pressure and CFM.
Yeah.
And how many stages you have really doesn't matter. It just happens to relate to the fact that if you have more stages, you have more pressure, more CFM. But hopefully we can get a motor that comes out that is going to give us those better, the higher performance, I think. Because I think one thing that we're all fighting is the heat from these motors. We've already discussed how a lot of us are spraying in less than favorable circumstances, especially when you're spraying in a metal building that's in 100, with 80% or 90% humidity. That's not easy. And technically you shouldn't even be spraying in those environments anyway, but we have to do what we got to do, right? And so building a system that would be able to be run cooler, and all of those things are really important. So that's why the Apollo systems tend to be a little bit larger than most systems. Why we have 26 cooling louvers, and I talk about that extensively, because getting that hot air out of the box after it's cooled the motor down, or tried to cool the motor down, is imperative, because otherwise, if I just start recirculating that hot air inside the box, I'm just exasperating the heat situation from the motor. So getting that hot air out is imperative to having a cooler running motor. And so we've worked extensively with both manufacturers to make sure that when we build the machines into the motors into a box, that it's not just any box, that it's got specific requirements that will end up meeting the requirements that we have to produce and to be able to have the performance that we're looking for in that system. And that's really important.
Absolutely.
As these motors get hotter, they lose pressure. So the worst thing is, from a painter standpoint, is I'm sitting here spraying. If I've only got a 5-minute job, that's no big deal. But if I've got a whole set of kitchen cabinets and I've got to spray, and I'm going to be spraying for a couple of hours, you can't have your machine constantly getting hotter and hotter and hotter as you're spraying. Because your finish quality is going down, down, down. We had a customer a couple of years ago that did an illustration of this with one of with a Graco system, actually. And he sprayed a door with the system cold, and it looked great. Then he sprayed a door 15 minutes later when the machine had gone up already 30 degrees more. And there was a level of surface tension on there, so it dried with some orange peel. And then he did the third door another 15 minutes later, and it was terrible. Like, you could see the huge difference between door 1, door 2, and door 3, and there was a 45-minute time span between the two, and the only thing he'd done is just let the machine keep running. And so you can have that adverse effect from the heat of these machines and not knowing that your pressure's dropping off. Right? And that's what a lot of people don't think about. And so unless you're willing to sit there and keep adjusting your viscosity on your paint every time your pressure drops a little bit more, it's you're chasing your tail, right? So we've designed our systems so that cold out of the box, they may not give you the same pressure that you get from another brand. But after 20 minutes of running, guess what?
It's still going to be the same
pressure. Ours is still running the same pressure, and all of those systems have dropped way below.
Absolutely. Well, it was funny because when we were doing the demo earlier, I always do this when demoing the machine, right, is put your hand right here where the bleed port is. It's hot, right? Okay, now fill the hose. And it's cool, and they're like, what the hell? That's insane, because I asked them, I was like, who here is familiar with turbines, and, do they get really hot on you? Check this out. And they can instantly, and you went and got that plug, right? So we had the machine out there. It was probably on for 3 straight hours, just running, right? And same thing, changing it, and it was still producing.
Because the power pause feature that we developed for the Precision 6 is such a good feature that it dramatically cools down the motor in between, changing your paint color or refilling the cup. So rather than going and turning it off and letting the motor just radiate the heat inside the box, which just traps it in there, we let it run at this cool down or tick over pressure, which is around 2 psi, and we found that will cool the motor down to the point where you keep it, the hose, you can touch it and everything else. I mean, there's other brands out there.
Yeah,
that
you can't touch the hose.
I know. You're going to get second-degree burns on it.
Like I said, I learned how to spray with the Graco turbine. I get it. Big old water hose on the. Yeah, no, I get it. One thing you were kind of, before you went into the whole thing about the quality of the motors and the boxes, the way they're all designed. One thing, if anybody out there is listening or watching, and you've tried turbine before and you just didn't like it for whatever reason, you got to really look at who those other companies have selling those products and where they're selling them. I mean, I see it all the time. We'll even get calls, right, from Apollo units we've sold, Sherwin-Williams, right? Sherwin-Williams or Home Depot or wherever it is, wherever they're pushing Titan. The coatings that store is selling, a lot of them, most of them, if you actually look at the TDS, they are not designed to be sprayed with HVLP.
Most of them aren't.
No, and they don't get that. So you get a sales rep that's selling you paint, right? And then you get the sales rep that, maybe this week Graco has a promotion and whoever sells the most unit gets a gift card at the end of the week or whatever. So now they're selling you a Graco turbine and, oh man, it's awesome and you can take it anywhere and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but they forgot to tell you that you have to use a different paint or it's not going to work properly, right? They're just, they don't know.
There are some paints that have been formulated just to spray through airless.
Most of them from Sherwin-Williams.
Yeah.
Most of them.
And it's evident when you read the can when there's no, you look at your application.
2,000 PSI or like
8 airless, and that's it.
That's it.
There's no HVLP or conventional or anything, right? No. It's either brush roller or airless.
That's it, with a huge tip, right? So a lot of people have purchased these machines and that's what they've experienced. So they have a really bad taste in their mouth. Like with Renner even, right? We have SKUs that if our turbine users, we just won't sell them, right? Like we know, like, hey, this looks like glue when you open the can, right? It's, you reduce it like 20 to 30%, which we don't want them to do. Right.
Well, no, Renner doesn't want you to reduce the product at all.
At all, right. But we have products that spray absolutely amazing out of the turbine, at 6 PSI. With little effort and no reduction. So, if you're listening and you just said, no, I'll never do that again, you might really want to consider it when you're really thinking about cost savings, maintenance, just different stuff like that. It starts to make a whole lot of sense to talk to somebody like ourselves, here at Fine Finish Supply. You're here regularly, a couple of times a year. That's what I tell people all the time, because they'll say, oh yeah, well, they have this special deal on the Graco or the Titan. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but I could call John and probably have him on the phone the same day, and whatever issue, you might be having, we're going to be able to really, for real, figure it out. We do real classes and we really know how to use this stuff, not just...
Well, at the end of the day, we're end users, right? I mean,
no, of course,
and that's what makes you such a great person to come and buy from, in the sense that you're not just a salesperson. You're not just owning a business that you're selling paint and equipment. You've owned your own cabinet shop. You've lived these guys. You still do it now once in a while. And so you know what the pains these guys are going through. Absolutely. It's like your whole finishing schedule that you talk about and all this, and the lean side of things, that all comes into playing into everything, right? And
absolutely.
And if you really want to have a profitable painting business, you've got to have the right tools, the right products, and the right
people around you.
And a real good grasp, I think, of how to really lean yourself out, because that's what it's going to take these days.
Oh yeah, 100%.
With us all competing for the same business, and there's lots of guys out there that are willing to undercut, and there's guys out there going down there and buying emerald and rolling it on, and a lot of times you're competing against those guys. So being efficient and being able to use less product, going back to Mike, we were talking about earlier up in Canada, I think he told me he'd gone from using 10 gallons on the average kitchen down to 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to pick on Alex earlier, who won the Apollo gun.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And he also won a Tri-Tech gun.
Yeah, this guy's lucky, man.
Yeah, he's one of our.
Good on you,
And
Alex.
actually, so this is what I'm saying. I'm going to pick on him. I know he listens to the podcast from time to time, because we were having this conversation earlier. He was exclusively using Renner, and kind of went to the dark side and using Centurion, and we were just having this conversation, and his thing was about price. The price, and I get it. Like, I completely 100% get it. He is a one-man show, man in the van operation, like Mike. Maybe he has a helper, maybe something like that now. But at the time, I remember distinctly, he bought equipment from us. We got set up. He went and worked with my dad and my Uncle Raymond for a week just for free, because he wanted to learn as much as he could.
Gotcha.
And my comment to him was about the coating was like, man, maybe you don't think you could charge the customer like another $300, per job to make up the cost? Because he's sitting there telling me, I know the product's better, the Renner product's better. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm thinking about it in my head, and we've talked about this, like the one-piece flow, and Mike is big on that one-piece flow. It'd be interesting if we could get the two of them on a podcast episode, because Mike's been doing it for years, right? And that's why me and Mike, we talk about these things, reducing traffic. You Lean Six Sigma, you've been through the whole.
Oh yeah, no, we've done that.
Yeah, for Absolutely. Lean manufacturing, and that's where a lot of this concepts come from. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, he's shooting with airless, and shoot, he probably, there's so many things he could probably be doing to make up that cost, where we're talking about the paint. So just kind of an off-topic thing, but on topic, right? Like you're saying,
yeah,
lean it out.
It's all relevant. I mean, I think that just comes down to, again, the core of what we are. Apollo, we build our systems because we realize that, people that use our systems can be really, really super efficient with the way they're using the paints and the materials. Yeah. And, Renner's obviously one of the more expensive cabinet coatings. And then there's, all the automotive coatings that are out there that are 10 times more expensive.
People think
than
our
Renner,
stuff's,
right?
they think our stuff's expensive. They have no clue.
Until you get into the automotive world, and you can have a pint of a product
base.
that's $150.
And that's not primer. That's not, that's base.
Just the color.
That's just base, and then you got to put clear on it.
Yeah,
yeah, dude.
Yeah. So
it's insane.
Yeah. So the paint can get a lot more expensive. So my whole reasoning for building the precision systems from the very early starts, where we started with what we had, our 1040 VR, which was a 4-stage version of that electronic system that we have now.
Yep.
And the whole purpose of us doing that was so we could dial in the exact right amount of air pressure that we needed to get the perfect finish.
Yep.
Any more than that, you're just wasting finish.
Oh yeah.
So we can all over atomize our material and spray it and get good results with it. Yeah. But you're going to do it with just a lot more finish that you just waste. And so what I try to teach people is like, you don't want to just finish. You want to finish the most efficiently way possible, because at the end of the day, that's going to go back in your pocket. Mm-hmm. And if you're a one-man shop, particularly if you're a one-man shop, it's very important how you watch all of those little costs like that.
100%.
And, if you can cut down your material costs by 50% or more, that's huge.
Oh, yeah.
And makes you competitive, right? And again, justifying that, I was talking to another customer this morning, kind of the same thing. It's like, well, how do you compete against the emeralds out there and the guys out there wanting to roll on emerald or something like that? And it's, well, you're going to be able to offer them a lot better warranty and a lot better quality of a finish, because your product is going to lay out, look better. Yeah. You've got way more customization you can do to it than you can do with just putting on a paint on cabinets. And you can be way more efficient with the way you use your product, so you can offer your customer a better price.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're more efficient in the way you're doing it. Right. It doesn't cost you as much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's always interesting because we have that conversation every day. We convert Emerald or Benjamin Moore customers weekly.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
it's not hard.
No, it's not once they see it. If you're purely having the conversation, because these guys, they're getting sold. Sherwin-Williams is, it's a publicly traded company.
Oh, they're huge.
And if you don't think that their main interest isn't their shareholders, like you're crazy.
Oh no, they have to
like
be.
you are insane, because we're talking a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and these guys are so accustomed to these reps that really, and not all of them, right? There's some good ones out there, but the majority, they're fresh out of college, or they're not hands-on blue-collar freaking paint trades people. They're college-educated salespeople,
right?
And they are going to force whatever their boss is telling them to force down your throat. Like when they launched Gallery, I mean, fuck, I gotta hand it to them, because these motherfuckers hit it hard.
Oh, they can market.
I mean,
hard,
they.
right?
Oh God, they're a marketing machine.
They run
They're a
magazine
marketing
ads and all
machine.
the PCA magazines.
Oh,
they run it, and everything. And
They had sales reps in classes teaching them what to say. They might not have even known what renter was, but they were telling them to go tell your customers this is better than renter or comparable to renter. Their marketing said, and it's nothing like that.
Sure.
After we finally got our hands on it, I was like, typical. Fucking typical Sherwin-Williams bullshit,
It's all made
dude.
to a price,
Oh,
right? And
God,
they market
dude.
it up
Yeah,
the ass. And
fucking
that's what these
typical.
companies do.
But
man.
they're gonna sell so fucking much of it,
Well,
you know,
and it's
because
the same thing that Graco does with their turbines, right?
Exactly.
No different, dude.
And the people don't know any different.
No.
So when we're having these conversations, it's like they're like guarded, because they've just been fucked so
Brainwashed.
many times, you know, like buy this Graco, you know what, you need this Titan now, you know.
Yeah.
Then somebody comes along and says, no, you need an Apollo, and they're like, well, shit, I've already
got
spent.
3 HVLPs.
Yeah, I've already, you know, how many, you know, I mean, that's
Well, and that's the sad part about where we find ourselves, I think, you know, because let's face it, the vast majority of turbine systems get sold through Sherwin-Williams.
Oh yeah,
and they're Graco and Titans,
and people
they,
have a bad
probably
experience.
80% of the market in HVLP turbine systems is owned by Graco and Titan.
Sure.
And the rest of us compete for the other 20% of the market.
Yep.
And that's about what it is, right? So I really wished I could get to these people and sort of educate them in the right way.
Yep.
Because then I really believe they wouldn't just run out and buy the first thing that they see on the Home Depot or Sherwin-Williams shelf, right?
Yeah.
But they're just, like you said, told this is what they need, and they're not told why, but just use this, and here's how you do it, and that's what they're told. And so you end up with a customer that's never tried HVLP before. Now they try it and they have a less than favorable experience with it, and now they're just turned off to the whole technology altogether.
Yep.
And they think, oh, it's way too complicated. I can't deal with all this bullshit. I'm going back to my airless.
Yep. Oh,
And that's
100%.
that's what happens.
Because the airless will spray the paints that they're buying from those companies. Right.
And the airless is in some ways is a lot easier to use, right?
Oh, 100%.
Airlesses are dumbed down. You got no controls on the gun. You set the pressure. You put the tip in the gun, and you just hose it on.
Oh yeah.
No cut, lightweight.
Yeah, yeah, and they, it's even like with the paints, because I mean, me and Matt have said this before, and we have yet to do it, because I'm not going to go spend the money to buy like one of those stupid, like, I shouldn't say stupid, but like a DIY thing that's like $39.99, at Home Depot.
Home rack.
They're little electro.
Yeah, I mean, just
buzz
you know what I
guns.
mean, like like a sprayer.
Avanti.
Yeah, whatever they have. Just a plastic
the
gun
little plastic
thing.
ones.
Because I guarantee you, I could spray some renter out of it, and it, if it's prepped right, it's gonna look good.
Yeah.
It's gonna look good.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about Renner,
And
Renner
a lot
makes
of
any piece of equipment look good.
Well, and
I
a
will
lot
say
of
that.
these, the Italian coatings companies, it's not just Renner. There's Ilva and the ICAs, and Ecro. They all have these characteristics where they self-level incredibly well, and that truly is the benefit to using them. It's not like we talk about it all the time. It's like man, I think you think you're better than you really are, because man, a lot of this shit's doing a lot of the work for you. It's not like automotive. Like that technology still is very similar to where it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, it is. It's base clear. It's all solvent. Sure, there's waterborne base coats that are coming around, but primers and everything, I mean, it's all solvent. And there has to be a skill level and an understanding of HVLP. That's the big problem in the wood finishing industry, is that there's no real training or education, right?
Very little.
It's just us out here in the street trying to do what we can to make people understand. But you know, they're like, they get it. They're like, oh shit, no, you need to use this and you need to use that, and then that's why, right? And yeah, we have none of that. So there's a lot more, you know, skill level to something like that. But anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's, I think, why a lot of people are going back, you know, because they get in and they get a little, because they have lack of training, and they either don't figure it out on their own, or they just can't be bothered because it's taking too long. Obviously, you know, there's a lot more control with an HVLP.
Way more.
Right? And I think that scares a lot of people too. When they're coming from an airless system, they're used to that simplicity. And when they get in and they have all these controls, and now I have to worry about viscosity and pressure and fan size and everything else, and it's like,
blow and go.
Right.
Blow and
And
go.
then you add all of that to it, and so there's no training.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, I really agree. You know, and that's one thing where I think Apollo is trying to step up more, and that's why I come out here a lot and do what I'm doing, because I realize that, you know, people need to have that training, and they need to understand how to use the equipment better in order to be able to get the full benefit from it.
Oh yeah.
And it's, you know, it's like Jose Mendoza, you know, he was one of our local customers here. He's been making fun of us for years. Right? And he was married to his compressed air, and he wouldn't change for his world. And like last year, he just started kind of switching a little bit, and he started trying it, and now he's got it dialed in, and now he's coming up to me going, man, I love this system, man. I'm never going back to my old way. And it's like, and then now he's just painted that whole truck in candy, man. And I was like, yeah, he's learning how to use the system, and he's taken the time to give it a shot. Sure. And he's developed the techniques to be able to, which are a little different in some cases, especially with the automotive side of things. But he's learned it. And now he's appreciating what he can do, and it's leveled up his game even higher.
Yeah, 100%. Right? Yeah, I mean, we painted Mike's car, right? Yeah. With 100%. You were around for you know.
I know. Jose
some of
was
it.
A big part of that.
Yeah. Jose came in, and we did the base together and laid out the graphics and everything, and so it's cool. You know, it's. And with technology changing, and I know y'all are going to continue to innovate. Now, Johnathan hasn't said anything yet, so Johnathan is you're grooming him to what's the plan?
I mean, well, we don't know what the plan is yet. Johnathan graduated a couple of years ago with his marketing degree. Yeah, and he's been getting his feet wet doing all of our marketing. So, you know, everything that you guys see out there now on our social media, our websites, SEO, blogs, all that stuff, Jonathan's doing all by himself. Yeah, he's doing a fantastic job. He's really learned a lot of stuff. You know, we've stepped up our game just even in the video production that we're doing, and all of that is a direct result of what he's doing. He's got to make a decision in the future as to whether he wants to continue to keep doing Apollo and continue the marketing for Apollo, or whether he wants to pursue a marketing career wherever that might take him. So,
what are you thinking, man? Let's hear from you.
No, I like the industry, and I grew up hands-on, so I like to use my hands. I enjoy painting, enjoy cars and stuff like that, so I definitely see it as an avenue in the future. I just enjoy, you know, going out to things like this, trade shows, and meeting the people, you know, understanding, you know, their knowledge and getting all the knowledge, because it's not as easy as you would think, you know. I mean, understanding the equipment's one thing, and then as soon as you start diving into the paint and the application, that's like a whole other science to this industry. So just trying to get a hold of everything, doing marketing has been great. It's been, you know, able to talk to people, get to know people, get my name out there, my face, and learn a lot more. So I'm going to continue that. Did operations for a couple years as well, so I know how to build everything, put it all together, the ins and outs of all the equipment, and it does really interest me. So I think in the future, we're looking like going that way.
Yeah.
But, time will tell. I want to just keep getting my feet wet.
Yeah.
And doing things like this to get more knowledge and see where it goes.
Well, I mean, the marketing, I think that's going to be the absolute most important thing, right? That's what's making, or in my opinion, that's what's making or breaking generational businesses right now, right? Like, without a doubt. Or even, people are struggling with how to market.
I was in that position, that exact position when I met you.
Yeah.
I think it was like 2019 when I met you, 2018, 2019, something like that.
Somewhere around there, maybe.
When I met you, I think I told you I was in a transition. Apollo has always traditionally done marketing. They're marketing through traditional advertising methods. So my dad had taught me how to. I even did a lot of stuff even before computers were really widely used for doing marketing and laying out your ads and things like that. But we used to have advertisements in most all of the major wood magazines back in the day. Woodshop News is still around. FDMC, which used to be Cabinet Maker, and then we had Woodworkers Journal and Wood Magazine, and there was a ton of them that we used to exclusively advertise in all of them, and it was all traditional forms of advertising. And then I want to say it was about 94. The internet started really coming out and started becoming like the new thing that we had to look at, and that was when we got our first website built. Yeah. And I remember I was in college at that time, and I actually was taking some courses and learning how to write web pages, and so I actually wrote and built our first website myself.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, back in it wasn't anything to be writing home about. Trust me. Nothing I would.
That'd be cool to see, man.
Oh yeah, I know.
That would be cool to see right now.
But hey, we had a website.
The information out.
Yeah, that's it.
Really all that matters.
But y'all had hvlp.com.
Right.
And so that was
that. I can't give myself credit for that either, because that was I told Dad, I said, Dad, we need to register apollosprayers.com. That's what we need.
Yeah.
And Dad's like, nope, we need hvlp.com. I'm like, oh, no, we need our name, our company name.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short is we ended up with hvlp.com, and we have had a website since before all of our major competitors have. And obviously now everybody freaking that makes spray guns in the world wants our website.
Do you know what the value of hvlp.com is?
Haven't even thought about it, dude.
Because
somebody would have
might
to buy the company to buy that website.
No, that's what I'm saying, is that there could be that could be important to somebody. One of the big players, like,
oh, I'm sure.
Shoot, hvlp.com is for sale.
I get courted by all the major manufacturers.
I guess everything's for sale.
Hey, everything's exactly right.
Well, they all try too. I've got a guy that's over at Titan that calls me usually once a year to see if I'm interested in selling, and I've had a couple of our customers, some of our larger customers, let me know that they would like to buy us if we're ever for sale. I had Carlisle Fluid Systems last month calling me up asking me if we wanted to sell. So there's plenty of suiters out there.
Absolutely.
We're just not interested in selling. We want to keep it. We want to keep it family owned, and we want to keep it the way we built it, and keep our name clean.
Well, it's digital. I think that's what's super important for anybody that owns a business right now. Is like, I don't think people really understand, or most people don't understand, the value of digital assets, especially in manufacturing, right? Because, it could be one thing if like, oh yeah, well, we have, a website, right? Or you've been doing blog posts and articles, and, just, you have this massive landscape, or presence online, and it's all tied to HVLP. So HVLP and Google, the way their analytics works now, you're not gonna, that pay to be on the first page. We all know that's bullshit now, right? It's like, you'll pay to be on a sponsored ad, but they're only putting organic content and trying to put the best content for when somebody types certain words, right? It's not, nobody's gonna come along and do it for you overnight anymore, and all of a sudden you're right there. The shit does not work.
Changing too. So what works today could not work tomorrow.
Exactly.
You'll have to go back and change those blog posts and do things to make it different to work now.
That's all totally different.
Well, and it's like these big YouTube people, or you work with Chris Berry. I know Chris Berry. We've met him together. We've both been to Idaho to his house to go do things. But if you ask yourself, what's different about a YouTube influencer and their following sizes, right? Well, like Chris Berry is probably the first person to put content on YouTube about painting.
Yeah, he's been
and
doing
just
it for
kept doing
years.
it, right? Yeah. So it's like, I don't care what any homeowner, anybody that types something about painting into Google, or YouTube, it's a guarantee you're going to see his videos. Yeah. Right. Yep. And because they want to show, they're saying, well, because this has been here the longest and it seems to be the most trusted, this is what we should show the person that's typing this. Yep. Right. So there's so much value in the digital assets. Oh my God. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, and they don't just disappear, right? They stay around.
Right.
So,
yeah.
They're not going anywhere anytime soon unless you delete it. And you don't usually want to delete anything unless it's received bad to the public.
No, exactly, man. Exactly. So.
Yeah, so that's kind of our direction has been changed a lot by the marketing that we've been doing lately. Sure. I mean, it really goes back to when I met you and that transition that we started talking about. And I was in a sort of a no man's land, I think, at the time, because I realized that the money I was putting into traditional magazine advertising was more or less a waste of money. Yeah, I'd get some value from it, but it was not trackable. I had no way of knowing what ads worked well and what ads didn't. Right. It was just a shotgun approach to your marketing, other than the trade shows and things like that, which we did heavily. But, with the internet coming around in the early 90s, the trade shows started dropping off pretty fast, because back in the day, let's face it, all of us used to go to trade shows so that we could learn about new products and get interested in products that were being introduced that weren't out in the market yet, and that we could learn. That was the only place to go.
Yeah, you didn't have the internet.
You can go on the internet and you can just type in whatever you want, and poof, anything new is going to come up, and you can see videos. And so it's completely changed the landscape of everything. So 100%. That more or less killed a lot of the little regional shows that we used to do back then. And so I was, in a quandary, basically going, well, how the hell are we going to market? How are we going to get our word out there? And then I met you, and I started, doing a little bit on social media, on Facebook and stuff like that. And I started realizing then, like, I'd see comments and stuff in some of our posts, hey, I thought Apollo was out of business. Yeah. And it's like, wow, these people haven't seen us and haven't heard from us in so long that they thought we'd gone out of business. Sure. Right? And so that kind of made me like, okay, we need to do something about it. And that's when you kind of showed me a little bit about the social media, and I started doing a little bit more of that. And then, Johnathan coming on here 2 years ago has just been the real mushroom for us, in the sense that, I kind of got things started and was able to just barely keep it running. Now he's taken that and just blown it up. And it's really, changed the whole way we go to market with our product now. And I think it's way better for the consumer as well, because they can get a really good understanding of what the product does and what it can and can't do before they're ready to purchase. And I think, it really does make it much better for the consumer.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think you see a lot of the big dogs coming online now, and they're trying to do a lot of the influencer marketing things. And, we see that from time to time. But I think what's different is when you can create content that really resonates with, the target markets, right? Because if you're a big corporate, company, and sure, you're going to appeal to certain people, but I mean, if the content doesn't make sense to that target market, or you're not doing something so different where you're just saying, oh, we have a better product, look, trust us, believe us, buy it,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work, right? So we're creating real, the opportunities y'all have to create unique content by doing stuff like this. Like Johnathan has the camera out, and somebody's be like, oh, what color is that? Right. Was that a candy red? Well, that starts the conversation, right?
Not exactly. And since we're here out in the field doing that, using the products, we know what products are being used in our videos, so we can, give that information to those customers asking, and not just, leave their comments hanging and never get answered.
Yeah, or connect them with Jose. Hey, that's Jose. This is his business. We did a lot of that because when I worked for Surf Prep, right, we were all working together. It was like we're all doing the same shows, we're planning events together, and it was really to everybody's benefit. It was like the way I always seen it. Like I tell him, it's like any independent paint retailer. Like I tell them, it's us against fucking Sherwin. Yep. It is. It really is. We can think we're competing against each other, but we're all competing against them.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with, Surf Prep competing with Merca or 3M or, whoever. Like, how do you break that?
Yeah.
Right? How does Apollo break that, Graco, Titan, freaking monopoly that they have? Well, shit, people will tell the story for you.
Exactly. Well, I think it comes down to how you treat your customers as well.
100%.
Right? So customer service is a big portion of that.
Sure. Yep.
And I'm a firm believer in that. And you can have a great product, but it's got to be backed up with great customer service too, to have a really good business model.
Absolutely.
And I've worked really hard at that, and we're really fortunate to have Sally in our office that basically does all our customer service for us, and she's been with us over 10 years now, and she's really learned the product really well inside and out. And although she's really never sprayed before in her life, she in theory knows a lot more than most painters. Right. And so that's the great part about it is, what company do you know these days that even has a toll-free number that you can get a hold of, first of all, right? And then when you call them up, that you can actually get a live body on the phone to talk to, right?
Oh, we know well. I mean, Matt probably knows more about Renner than anybody, any average Renner user, right? But has been very limited in actually spraying it or applying it, but could tell you every product that we have and their intended uses and what needle and nozzle and what airless pressure setting, and he'll tell you, he knows it.
And that knowledge, knowledge of it is invaluable.
Just like Sal, it is. So then once he goes out there, it's like, well, shit, now all I have to do is spray it. I already know that part of it. Now we just need to learn,
And I think it also comes down to some level of sense of community as well, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I think that's what separates us smaller, more family-owned businesses like Surf Prep, where we're genuinely interested in the industry.
Sure.
We're genuinely interested in improving the industry and what goes on. Yep. And so we don't do it just because we want to make money and that's it, right? We all have to make a living at it, sure. Yeah. But that's not our primary motive for what we do.
Right.
We want to make the industry better through providing it with better products, and our innovation and the things that we come out with are what drive that. Yep. And I think the same thing is, with Surf Prep and companies like that.
Absolutely.
That you can give back to the community in many ways, right? I mean, not through just charitable events and things like that.
Education.
But education, building a good product, and really being there to support your customers, because even when you build a great product, things can go wrong.
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
Nothing's perfect in this world, and since our systems are built by imperfect people, they do have problems.
Sure.
But that's why we have customer support and why we have a warranty and things like that, right? So having that, knowing that eventually every product's going to fail at some point or time, but having a product that that you've got the backing of the company is huge, right? And I think that's what a lot of people keep coming back to us for. And when I read the comments that we get, and we finally, after struggling for a couple of years now, have finally got over 100 Google reviews on our rating, and we're 5-star rating with over 103 reviews now or something like that. Genuine reviews. And if you look at those reviews on there, a lot of them talk about our customer service and how great that is, and what a support it is, and how customers are constantly fighting certain problem or whatever, and then they call up Sally and it's like, oh, it's already solved overnight, right? Kind of thing, and it makes it so much easier.
Well, That's probably about it. I think I hear the rain coming down pretty hard.
Rain?
Yeah, that was rain.
Wow, I
Yeah.
thought that was,
that was
the air conditioner
No,
kicking on or
that
something.
was rain.
Holy moly.
Now I immediately shoot, do we need to go close the doors? And
yeah.
so, but yeah.
We might be getting some more flooding here in Houston, huh?
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be
I know this
pretty
whole week
good.
it's supposed to be thunderstorms.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
Stay
quite a bit.
dry out there, guys.
Yeah. Well, that's I think it's probably a good stopping point, though, man. I mean, it was good to hear. I've heard the story before.
Well,
right?
I know you have many times.
but yeah, when
It's kind of cool to get it down on a podcast.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. That's why I keep telling my dad I want to have my grandpa before he goes, and get him up here to just listen to him tell everybody to go fuck themselves, because that's how he is.
Yeah.
Well,
he's just like the rest of us. We're just not bullshit people.
Oh,
man.
dude,
So
he's
one thing
really,
you're never going to get from us is a bunch of bullshit, man. If we can't do it, we're going to be the first people to tell you.
Oh yeah. But the old man, he is rough around the edges. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Well, thanks for having us, Lewis. It's
Absolutely.
been a pleasure coming out. It's always a pleasure to come out here to Elite, and if you guys need us, you know where we're at. So hvlp.com.
Yep. What's the phone
track
number?
us down there. Phone number is 888-900-HVLP, which is 4857.
There you go.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and end it there. We appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
The Fine Finish podcast was created and hosted by Louis Hasso, and produced and co-hosted by Matt Looney. Our theme music is by Kirk Wellness on SoundCloud. Fine Finish Supply is a stocking distributor of Renner Wood Coatings, Surf Prep Sanding, Apollo HVLP, and Tri-Tech Airless. To support this podcast, we ask that you share it with others by simply passing on the link, post it on your social media, or just tell everyone you know. For more information and to reach us, visit our website at www.finefinishsupply.com. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to reach out to us at 1-866-304-8640. Thanks for listening.